Sometimes paranoia is just good planning in disguise. That's what I kept telling myself 3 months ago when I hired the security company to install the cameras, even as my coworkers' mockery echoed through the halls of Barrett Technologies. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 35, Director of Research and Development at one of the country's leading quantum computing firms. At least, that was my title until this morning, when CEO Marcus Barrett himself accused me of corporate espionage in front of the entire board. The evidence is irrefutable, Marcus declared, his silver hair catching the morning light streaming through the 40th floor windows. Someone has been leaking our quantum encryption protocols to Oriental Technologies, and the trail leads directly to Dr. Mitchell's department. I felt 12 pairs of eyes boring into me, the full board, plus our chief security officer, James Wong, who couldn't quite hide his triumphant smirk. They'd been building this case for weeks, feeding the CEO carefully selected pieces of information that made me look guilty. But they'd made one crucial mistake: they didn't know about my cameras. Before we continue, I said, keeping my voice steady as I pulled out my phone, I'd like to share some security footage from my office. From last night, specifically. James Wong's smirk faltered. Any unauthorized surveillance equipment is against company policy. Actually, I interrupted, I filed the paperwork with HR 3 months ago. You signed off on it yourself, James. Remember? He had. He'd been so amused by my paranoid request that he'd approved it without really reading it. Fine, go ahead with your little spy game, he'd laughed. Maybe you'll catch the cleaning crew stealing paper clips. I connected my phone to the boardroom's display system. This footage is from midnight last night. Watch carefully. The video showed my office in the eerie glow of emergency lighting. At first, nothing moved. Then a figure entered, using a keycard that shouldn't have existed. The person moved directly to my computer, inserted a USB drive, and began typing. Let me enhance the image quality, I said quietly. The figure's face became clear, Marcus Barrett himself, our CEO, breaking into my office in the middle of the night. The boardroom erupted in whispers. Marcus's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. But I wasn't done. Now, watch what he does next. On screen, Marcus opened my filing cabinet using another key that shouldn't have existed, removed several folders, and began photographing documents with his phone. Those are the encryption protocols, I explained to the board. The ones that were supposedly leaked from my department. Interesting that they showed up on Oriental Technologies servers this morning, isn't it? This is ridiculous, Marcus sputtered. Obviously the footage is doctored. The cameras upload directly to a secure blockchain, I cut in. Every frame is timestamped and authenticated. But that's not the interesting part. I swiped to another video feed. This is from 3 nights ago. The new footage showed James Wong in my office, planting documents in my desk drawers, documents that would later be discovered during a security audit. You're both probably wondering how I knew to install the cameras, I continued. That's an interesting story. It started 6 months ago, when I first noticed something odd about our quantum encryption project. I could see Marcus and James exchanging panicked glances. They knew what was coming. The project had been my baby, a revolutionary approach to quantum key distribution that could make our encryption unbreakable. But small inconsistencies had started appearing in our test results. Tiny changes in the code that nobody could explain. At first, I thought it was just normal debugging issues. Then I found the first backdoor. It was elegant, hidden so deep in the code that most people would never notice it. But I'd written the original algorithms myself. I knew every line of code like I knew my own heartbeat. Someone had modified my work, creating a secret way to bypass our quantum encryption. The backdoor was sophisticated, I told the board. It needed 2 people to implement it, someone with high-level access to our systems, and someone who could alter the security protocols to hide the changes. Someone like our CEO and our chief security officer. Marcus stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. This is absurd. You have no proof. Actually, a new voice spoke from the doorway. She has quite a lot of proof. Special Agent Diana Chen of the FBI's Cyber Division stepped into the boardroom, followed by several agents in tactical gear. Dr. Mitchell has been working with us for the past 3 months, documenting your collaboration with Oriental Technologies. The cameras were our idea, actually. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as Agent Chen continued. We've been investigating Oriental Technologies for years. They've been trying to steal quantum encryption technology from multiple companies. But you two made it easy for them, didn't you? For the right price. James Wong made a break for the second doorway, but found his path blocked by more agents. The cameras were just part of it, I explained to the stunned board members. Once I found the first backdoor, I started looking deeper. The money transfers through shell companies. The mysterious meetings in Shanghai. The sudden changes to our security protocols that just happened to align with Oriental Technologies' development schedule. But there was more to the story, much more. As the FBI began reading Marcus and James their rights, I thought about the real reason I'd gotten suspicious, the piece of evidence that had started it all. Something so small that nobody else would have noticed it. Because this wasn't just about corporate espionage or quantum encryption. This was about murder. Agent Chen, I said quietly, show them what we found in the old server logs. She nodded grimly. The logs from the night Dr. Thomas Mitchell accessed the mainframe for the last time. The night of his accident. My father's face flashed in my memory, brilliant physicist, loving parent, and the first person to notice that something was wrong with our quantum encryption protocols. The night he died in that suspicious car crash, he'd been trying to warn me about something he'd discovered. The board members leaned forward as Agent Chen pulled up the logs. None of them knew the real reason I'd installed those cameras. They were about to learn that sometimes, paranoia isn't about fear. Sometimes, it's about justice. The server logs told a story that only a handful of people could have understood. To most of the board members, they just looked like strings of code and timestamps. But I'd spent the last 6 months piecing together what my father had discovered that night. At 11:42 p.m., Agent Chen explained, Dr. Thomas Mitchell accessed the quantum encryption mainframe using his emergency credentials. He downloaded several files, then initiated a secured transmission to the FBI's cybercrime division. That transmission was intercepted and deleted before it reached us. I pulled up another window on the display. This is the building's security footage from that night. Watch who enters the server room after my father. The grainy video showed Marcus Barrett and James Wong rushing into the server room just minutes after Dad left. They spent 20 minutes inside, then emerged looking agitated. An hour later, my father's car went off the road on his way home. No skid marks, I said quietly. No mechanical failures. Just a perfectly maintained vehicle suddenly veering off a straight road on a clear night. The police called it an accident. I called it impossible. Marcus, still flanked by FBI agents, tried one last bluff. You can't prove anything. Traffic accidents happen. The quantum encryption protocols my father was working on, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, were designed to be unbreakable, but he found something in the code, a pattern that shouldn't have been there, a backdoor so sophisticated it could only have been created by someone with intimate knowledge of quantum computing. I brought up side-by-side comparisons of code sequences. The backdoor wasn't just for stealing our technology, it was designed to create a secret channel for transferring massive amounts of data without detection, perfect for corporate espionage, money laundering, or, I paused significantly, helping certain foreign powers bypass international banking sanctions. The board members were starting to understand. Barrett Technologies wasn't just a victim of corporate espionage, it had been deliberately compromised from the inside, turned into a tool for international financial crime. Oriental Technologies was just the tip of the iceberg. Agent Chen took over. They were a front for a much larger operation. Dr. Mitchell, show them what your father found in the deep code analysis. I pulled up the final set of files, the ones that had taken me months to decrypt. Lines of quantum code that revealed connections to banks in sanctioned countries, to weapons manufacturers, to terrorist financing networks. My father realized that our quantum encryption wasn't just being stolen, it was being weaponized, used to hide transactions that could destabilize entire economies. I turned to Marcus. That's why he had to die, wasn't it? Because he was going to expose everything. James Wong cracked first. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, he blurted. We just needed to stop the transmission, corrupt his data, the car. That wasn't part of the plan. Shut up, Marcus snarled, but it was too late. The car's computer, I continued, bringing up more data, was accessed remotely that night. Someone used a backdoor in its operating system, similar to the one in our quantum encryption. The brakes and steering were compromised. My father never had a chance. One of the board members, Dr. Helen Chong, spoke up. But how did you get access to all this evidence? These systems are supposedly unhackable. I smiled grimly, because my father taught me everything he knew about quantum computing, including how to hide things in plain sight. The transmission to the FBI that night? It wasn't really interrupted. Dad had created a quantum entangled backup that could only be accessed using a key he left for me. The quantum entanglement key had been hidden in plain sight, in a scientific paper he'd published just weeks before his death. A paper about parent-child relationships in quantum systems, dedicated to me. The equations contained a coded message that led me to his secret backup server. For 6 months, I played dumb. I explained, let them think they'd gotten away with it. Worked with the FBI to gather evidence while pretending to be the grieving daughter just trying to carry on her father's work. Agent Chen nodded. Dr. Mitchell's cooperation was crucial. She helped us map the entire network, identify all the players. The cameras in her office were just the final piece, catching them in the act of trying to frame her when they realized she was getting too close to the truth. Marcus Barrett had slumped in his chair, his arrogance finally shattered. You have no idea what you've done, he muttered. The people behind this, they don't forgive failure. We know exactly who they are, Agent Chen replied. Teams are moving in on their operations worldwide as we speak. Your partners in Shanghai, Dubai, Moscow, they're all being shut down right now. The boardroom erupted in chaos as more FBI agents entered, securing computers and documents. Dr. Chong approached me quietly. Your father was my friend, she said. I always knew his death wasn't an accident, but I never imagined. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? Because Dad's notes warned me not to trust anyone in the company. The conspiracy went deeper than just Marcus and James. I looked meaningfully at several other board members who were now being questioned by FBI agents. Some of our colleagues were willing to look the other way for the right price. The next few hours passed in a blur of federal agents, forensic accountants, and cybersecurity experts swarming the building. Barrett Technologies' stock price would take a hit, but the company would survive. The quantum encryption protocols, the legitimate ones, were still revolutionary. As evening fell, I found myself back in my office, looking at the hidden cameras that had helped expose the truth. Agent Chen joined me. The DA is confident about the murder charges, she said. Between the car's compromised systems and the server logs, we can prove premeditation. Your father will get justice. He already has, I replied, picking up the framed photo on my desk. Dad and me at my PhD graduation, both of us beaming at the camera. He taught me that in science and in life, the truth leaves traces. You just have to know where to look. The quantum encryption project would continue under new leadership. Dr. Chong had been appointed interim CEO, with a mandate to clean house and rebuild the company's reputation. She'd asked me to head the restructured research and development division. Your father would be proud, Agent Chen said, heading for the door. Not just of you exposing the truth, but of how you did it, using their own quantum encryption against them. That's poetic justice. I smiled, remembering Dad's favorite saying, in quantum mechanics, everything is connected. Just like in life, pull one thread, and the whole pattern changes. The conspiracy he'd discovered had been vast, threatening not just our company but global financial stability. His last act had been to ensure that I would have the tools to unravel it. Not just the quantum entanglement key, but the lessons he'd taught me throughout my life: patience, attention to detail, and the understanding that sometimes the biggest truths hide in the smallest anomalies. 1 month later, I stood in the newly reorganized quantum computing lab, watching my team work on the next generation of encryption protocols. The cameras were still there, no longer hidden, but a reminder that security isn't paranoia when the threat is real. Marcus Barrett and James Wong had both taken plea deals, providing evidence against their international co-conspirators. The federal investigation had uncovered similar schemes at other tech companies, leading to a wholesale reorganization of quantum computing security protocols worldwide. Dad's quantum entanglement paper had been republished, this time with an appendix explaining its hidden message. It had become required reading in computer security courses, teaching future generations that the best encryption isn't just about complex algorithms, it's about understanding human nature. The civil suits were still ongoing, shareholders demanding accountability, customers worried about compromised systems, but Barrett Technologies was emerging stronger, more transparent, with new safeguards against internal corruption. Dr. Chang had implemented many of Dad's original security proposals, the ones that had been mysteriously lost before reaching the board, including his idea for quantum-secured cameras throughout the building, not just in my office. Your father used to say that observation changes quantum systems, Dr. Chang told me during a recent meeting. He proved that observation can change corrupt systems too. The international financial networks that Marcus had helped hide were still being untangled. Every day brought new revelations about how deep the corruption had gone, how many lives had been affected by the hidden money flows that our compromised encryption had concealed. But Dad's last gift, the quantum entangled backup, had provided the key to unraveling it all, like a thread pulling loose from a sweater. Once we had that first piece, the whole thing began to unravel. I kept the cameras in my office, even though the immediate threat was gone. They served as a reminder that sometimes the craziest seeming precautions are the wisest choices, that paranoia, properly channeled, can be a form of preparation. The world of quantum computing was changing, becoming more secure, more transparent. Dad's death had exposed vulnerabilities not just in code, but in human nature. His legacy lived on in the new security protocols, the enhanced oversight, the understanding that even the most sophisticated technology is only as trustworthy as the people who control it. Late one night, working on the next generation of quantum encryption, I found myself thinking about those final server logs, about Dad, alone in the building, racing against time to preserve the truth before his enemies could bury it. He must have known the danger he was in, must have suspected what might happen. But he'd trusted me to finish what he'd started, to prove that in quantum computing and injustice, everything leaves traces. You just have to be brave enough to look for them, smart enough to understand them, and patient enough to wait for the right moment to reveal them. The cameras in my office caught my reflection as I worked, and for a moment, I could almost see Dad standing behind me, nodding in approval. His last lesson had been his most important, that the truth, like quantum information, can never truly be destroyed. It just takes the right observer to bring it into focus. The end.